Hello everyone. So I haven't made a video in quite a long time, but I felt particularly inspired to make another squiggle screech again in reply to a mutual friend of mine, Visa, talking about his book Friendly Ambitious Nerd and a new directive that he wanted to articulate uh, revolving around inhabiting questions. And he really fleshed out the idea of questions as, the joy and splendor of being a nerd is being able to ask all of these questions. And I want to take the approach of what it means, or of how to inhabit a question, right? Like what that word in particular really stuck out to me when he was explaining the sort of like the questions behind, what it is to be a nerd, right? And the key thing that kind of fell out of inhabiting a question is sort of a frame of world building, right? So, as nerds, in common parlance terms, they have a sense of world building, in a fictional sense, right? So take, for example, J.K. Rowling. She made probably one of the most influential and well-renowned worlds in the history of, our modern civilization with the Harry Potter series, right? And when I was curious a long time ago to just think of how the hell did she write that sort of thing, like a little anecdote sort of came out that stuck out in my mind of, over time, she was able to put down a bunch of notes that she would write down in her commutes, whether she was like in the tube or like on an airport. One in particular was when she basically wrote down the houses of Hogwarts, like on the back of, the airplane sick bag, which is really interesting. And so thinking in her mind, like, what sort of question would drive someone to continually put all of these things down? And so there's a sort of essence that comes to the sort of things that she's answering, but not necessarily knowing what the question is, right? She's building this world, but what is the essence? Like, what is the thing that she wants to inhabit? What's the question? The problem that all of these sorts of notes are answering, right? And to be honest, like thinking about it, it's like, it's the question of what if witches and wizards had to go to boarding school, right? I mean, if you think about it, right, that sort of question poses a lot of, I don't know, unforeseen like second order details that really drives at the heart of what makes Harry Potter such a good story. The sort of mythological myths of witches and wizards throughout like fantasy, being in the context of something as mundane as a boarding school, right? And having the dynamics of these kids growing up with such a fantastical world, but still dealing with like the relationships of making friends and navigating life and trying to be a kid thrusted into an adult world, like that resonates with people. Like that is the question that J.K. Rowling had inhabited with all the notes that she did, but she didn't really know. Maybe she actually knew what the question was, but like you can see how when a question is inhabited, all these sorts of things can come out, and these notes can basically answer these things in response, right? So, okay, yeah, sure. Like in a fictional sense, world building, yeah, sure. But like, what does this have to do like with something a little bit more serious? Like something like the sciences. Okay, sure. Let's think of a scientific sense. So, the story of Richard Feynman, right? When he was burnt the fuck out, doing a bunch of physics, he decided to like take some time, following his curiosity, right? I don't know, for people around here that know about like Richard Feynman, you would know the fact that he spent a decent amount of time modeling wobbling plates and seeing the mathematical model of what it would be like to model the inside of, whatever technical details of like the equations that come with an object, like a surface, like spinning on an axle and trying to model that. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, like that was an interesting thing, and I'll keep that in my back pocket. But then when he was starting to fiddle around a bit with what he wanted to do next in science, he came into, the concept of like electrodynamics. And so with the things that he left behind, he was able to like ask the question of, hey, like, what if electrons moved like spinning, wobbling plates, right? So he's able to take the sort of perspective of what he spent so much time being playful in and having something like really grounded. Like, you can't get any more grounded than like a plate on a little stick, right? That's wobbling around, and trying to move it in the context of quantum electrodynamics and basically have a Nobel Prize out of it. Like, that is like a question that he was able to inhabit. It's, in a sense, creating a new worldview, taking whatever perspective that you have, like in a mundane sense, and then bringing it forward with like a shared understanding of like his background in physics. I'm like, cool, yeah. Like, you can see how, or I'm starting to see like how over time, like, what was I gonna get at? It's, you can see how over time, when you ask like a very like articulated question based off of like little questions that you had decided to follow earlier, like spinning plates, you can sort of like refine that and then use that question to continually act into more research of like, oh, okay, like how can we validate the sort of models and questions or that we had in this particular context, and then apply it into that particular context. Like, let's conduct some experiments. Cool, let's do that. And so now, there's another question of like, okay, I'm not a fiction writer. I'm not like a Nobel Prize physicist. I am a businessman. I want to solve problems in the real world now. Like, I'm in tech. What does this have to do with inhabiting questions? And it's the same thing too, right? If you look at something like Uber, for example, this sort of sticks out because their slide deck for when Uber was pitched to a bunch of BCs, you can actually see the things that they were thinking about when they asked the question, hey, like, the cab system in New York is kind of crap. What if we could hail a cab by using your phone? Like, that question in and of itself framed a lot of the business prospect and like the worldview of how you can make the world the way that you want it to by creating a business, by bringing people together to form a project and embody it at like the largest scale possible. You can ask people on the street, like, hey, you use your phone, right? If this is like 2006, 2007, like, what are the sorts of things that you use on your phone on a day-to-day basis? What's the experience like when you hail a cab? Like, you can sort of see that over time, these sorts of things, when you ask like a certain amount of questions, or the right question, and you sort of see the mechanics behind how it works so that you can move it and act, maybe like that's what curiosity, okay. Okay. This is I'm starting to run out of steam here. Oh my gosh. Okay. Man, this is harder than I thought. I'll post this maybe somewhere else later. Hopefully I can do another take of this, of course. But you kind of get what I'm getting at, right? Like, I feel like the thing that is important is really demonstrating, like, when you inhabit a question, you create a world that builds around the essence of what that question is pointing towards. You refine the details that come out when you inspect that question. And validate, experiment, remix the things that come with answering that question. Yeah. That's not bad. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna upload this video. Like, that actually made a lot of sense. So, okay, yes. So, in response to Visa asking a question, I want to pose a question at the end of this video. For anyone who is creating a worldview, who's already asked a bunch of questions, like, what sort of questions can you thread together in order to refine the essence of the question that these other questions are trying to answer? Maybe? I don't know. I'm still gonna upload this. We'll see how the fuck this turns out. I'm trying, and I did it, and I'm uploading it. No matter what happens, I'm keeping it in. Good luck. It's good to be back. Take care.